So I read in the New York Times yesterday an op-ed by Thomas Friedman. When I say yesterday, I mean May 26th is yesterday. Today is May 27. And I would like to comment on this op-ed that Mr. Friedman wrote. The heading of the op-ed is "The Mideast conflict is blowing up the region and the Democratic Party." And that's when it really caught my eye, when he was talking about, in my opinion, mixing, blowing up the region, meaning the Middle East, and the Democratic Party. I am a Democrat, but I think that these two conflicts or these two issues should not be mixed. So this is what he wrote. This is what Mr. Friedman wrote. "Unless we preserve at least the potential of a two-state solution, the one-state reality that would emerge in its place won't just blow up Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza. It could very well blow up the Democratic Party and every Jewish organization and a synagogue in America." So my first reaction was, is it the responsibility of the Israelis or the Palestinians to preserve the Democratic Party? And it clearly is not. But what's interesting to me is that he writes, unless we preserve at least the potential of a two-state solution. He's not really talking about a two-state solution. He's talking about preserving the potential of a two-state solution. Government, which brings me to the next point, and that is a government, the U.S. government, or any person should have a well-defined goal. You cannot mix goals to include the Middle East, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the Democratic Party, and Jewish organizations and synagogues in America. These are goals that should not be mixed. So we need a clarity of purpose, in my opinion. And the purpose is peace, is to speak about peace. And unfortunately, in the entire op-ed, Mr. Friedman did not mention his peace plan, or that the US should be supporting peace, or that the US should have a peace plan, or his vision, or the US visions for peace. So any policy regarding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which does not have a well-defined peace plan, in my opinion, is lacking in merit and also unsustainable. You have to start with the goal, and the goal has to be well-defined, and it has to be peace. And mixing up goals of, like Mr. Friedman said, preserving a potential of a two-state solution and destroying the possibility of a one-state, and at the same time saving the Democratic Party and Jewish organizations and synagogues, is just preposterous. You can't mix up these goals. I always like to give the example about 60 years ago. I used to walk with my mother to the dentist. And I was 7 years old, and or maybe at that time, at that age. And I realized that she's going to the dentist a lot. And I asked her, why are you going to the dentist so much? And she said, well, the dentist recommended I pull out all my teeth. And I asked her why. And she said, because among other reasons, he believed that it will help my hearing problem. I was 7 years old. I wasn't a medical doctor. I'm not a medical doctor now, but I wasn't definitely when I was 7 years old. I wasn't a medical doctor. I didn't have enough understanding to realize that pulling teeth does not improve your hearing. And I feel bad for my mother that she did not have the understanding, and she believed the doctor that pulling teeth would help her hearing. It turned out that it didn't. So the same thing when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. You have to focus on one thing, and that one thing is peace. And it should not be a policy to preserve everything in America that Mr. Friedman feel is important. And I also think that it's important. I am a Democrat. I feel that it's important not to fracture the Democratic Party, but I am not in favor of having a policy in the Middle East between the Israelis and the Palestinians that would help preserve the policy, to preserve the Democratic Party or every synagogue in America. So mixing up goal is a recipe for failure in this situation. And I am also very much opposed to Mr. Friedman's unilateral declarations or conclusion. He certainly did not support what he was saying. Let's read what he's saying. Unless we preserve the potential of a two-state solution, the one-state reality would emerge in its place and won't just blow up Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza. It could very well blow up the Democratic Party and every Jewish organization and synagogue in America. Well, how did he come up with that conclusion? There are certainly many, many one state in this world, democracies, that emerged without blowing up the Democratic Party. How did he come to the conclusion that one state will blow up Israel? Well, he needs to explain all of that. That's not something that you just write, in my opinion, and expect people to accept it on face value. So I am very much against this unilateral declaration. I happen to be thinking that a one state is not possible. But the reason that I think one state is not possible, although I think it is the ideal situation, I think a one state is the most desirable in a vacuum situation, because what's better than having one unilateral state, one democracy, one state that is based on a secular principle that gives religion freedom and gives those that are not religious also freedom, that allows Jews, Muslim, Christians to practice their religion and to go and pray at their holy sites. And I think that's the ideal situation, but I think it's very unlikely to happen. Why? Because in order to have a one state, you need to have one government. And at this time, we are in 2021, we have three governments. We have the Israeli government, we have the Palestinian Authority government, and we have the Hamas government. Now, regardless of whether we like those governments or any of them, in order to accomplish one government, you need to destroy all three governments in order to make one government that would be acceptable to the entire area, that would be elected by the entire area. At this time, it's an unrealistic possibility. The Israeli government, the Hamas government, it turned out, and the PA, they're very strong governments. They're strong militarily. They have very strong support from their constituents or their population. They have a strong economy, especially in Israel. They have even nuclear weapon. So do you see the possibility that they will give up everything, especially when they're so suspicious of each other and they see each other as enemies? What is the possibility? What is the likelihood that they will agree to dismantle themselves, or that someone else would dismantle them? I think it's very unlikely. So I think that even though it is a good solution, it is unpractical. It's an impractical solution. And I wish that the New York Times explain why is it not possible to create a one state. Now, Mr. Friedman also right. If that happens, the charge that Israel has become an apartheid-like entity will resonate and gain traction far and wide. The Democratic Party will be fractured. Again, you don't create a policy in order to preserve the Democratic Party. President Biden is the president of the United States. He's not the president of the Democratic Party. And like I said before, Israelis and Palestinians do not have the responsibility to solve the American political affairs. Those political affairs are the responsibility of the Americans. Now, he also right about the two-state solution. President Biden must re-energize the possibility of a two-state solution. And by the way, the underline re-energize is just something that PowerPoint. I did check the spelling of the word re-energize in the New York Times, and that's exactly how it is being spelled. But somehow in my PowerPoint, it is indicated as a spelling error, but I did check that, and that's how they spelled it, and that's how I wrote it. But let's talk about the two-state. And by the way, he's really not talking about the one state, the two-state as a possibility. If he's talking about the preserving the potential of a two-state solution. Well, you know, it's so far from having a clear policy. Why would you want to have a policy to preserve the potential? Who is going to buy that kind of a policy? He's not saying outright, that he's in favor of the two-state solution. He's only saying that he's in favor of preserving that potential. Well, that's not strong enough. That's not focused enough. But let's talk about the two-state solution. I mean, he may be supporting it. Is a two-state solution viable? Well, the UN voted on a two-state solution in 1947. This is 2021, over 73 years ago. Since then, many countries, including presidents, prime ministers from many governments, including many US presidents, and including Clinton and Bush 1 and Bush 2, I believe, and Obama and Trump. And many Secretary of States, not to mention the European governments, the Quartet, they all try to create a two-state solution, including the Palestinians, including the Israeli government, and haven't succeeded. So isn't it time to start thinking, why is it that they haven't succeeded? Or is it possible? I mean, with the settlement project that is so strong in the West Bank, with the infrastructure, the roads, the freeways, the highways, the electricity, the water that is going through the West Bank, is it really even worth discussing that solution? And I think that any political observer, any person who really digs into that Israeli-Palestinian conflict would see that it's not a viable solution. So why would you bring it up in 2021 to preserve the possibility of a two-state solution? And the other thing is, would the two-state bring peace? Even if it is possible, isn't it a lot more consistent with American values? And Mr. Friedman is an American journalist. He's an American citizen. Isn't it much more consistent to integrate, not to separate, not to segregate based on religion? Segregating people based on religion is one of the most primitive segregation plans. And that's what a two-state is about. It's basically saying Jews will live here, Muslim and Christians will live here. That's segregation. American value is against segregation. The American Constitution is for integration. So why would Mr. Friedman not use or not utilize American value when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? And even if it is possible to segregate, would it be peace? Would Israel give the Palestinian access to the Jordan Valley? And even if they do, which is very, very unlikely, will there be peace between the Palestinians and the Israelis? Would they feel that they got what they want? And the answer is clearly not. A two-state is going to be leading to more suspicion, more hostility, in my opinion, because both sides are not going to feel that justice has been done to them. and the Palestinian state will be such a strong, such a small state, it would be completely dependent on Israel. So why would a complete dependency bring peace? See, in my opinion, the key to have peace is more integration, more knowing about each other, more working together. Just like in the United States has 50 states with 50 constitutions and one government that is connecting all of them. So why not borrow what the United States was so successful in making? And that's peace between 325 or 350 million people. Why is it that the 14 million Israelis and Palestinians are such a difficult problem? Is the hatred between the Palestinians and the Israelis is so great? No, we had much greater hatred in the United States. We had a civil war with 700,000 people being killed. We had lynching of thousands of African Americans. We had slavery, but we were able to resolve those by using the principles of rejecting segregation, rejecting racism, and having integration. That's what the US did successfully, not successfully enough. I'm not saying that it is a complete success, but it is much easier now than it was even 100 years ago, 75 years ago. And the thing that also distresses me is why not consider other options? Why did Mr. Friedman is so limited in his views into really one option? He considered the one state a dangerous solution. I think that's what he said. The one state reality would emerge in its place, in other words, in the place of the two state. One just blow up Israel, the West Bank and Gaza. So clearly he thinks that the one state is a dangerous solution because it will blow up Israel, the West Bank and Gaza, and the Democratic Party. So why would he be so limited? It boggles the mind. I see that all the time. Why are we so limited to the one solution, the two-state solution, which proved to be a failure? I mean, this is the only solution that was tried again and again and again, is a two-state solution. And it failed, and it brought more violence and more suspicion. Why would Mr. Friedman be so limited about other options? And by the way, I did send him many, many letters about what I think, and I sent him a video of the movie that I made about what I think is the best solution, is the only realistic solution. And that is to create a common government for the people of Israel and Palestine in the West Bank, Gaza, and Jerusalem, and Israel. So I think that I'll speak about that in another, and I'll speak about the benefit of a common government. But I think that a common government would be based on secular principle. It would be a government for the entire people of Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza. And it could exist side by side with the Israeli government and the Palestinian government. It doesn't have to, we don't have to dismantle the Israeli government. We don't have to dismantle the Palestinian government or the Hamas government. We could create a common government for the people of Israel, the West Bank, Gaza, and Jerusalem, based on democratic principles, based on equality, based on fairness, a secular government for the entire area that would be exclusively working for peace. This government would remove the apartheid. And by the way, yes, there is an apartheid. You know, I heard Benjamin Netanyahu scolding the foreign minister of France yesterday. How dare he say that Israel is an apartheid state because Israel gives equality to Arab Israelis. Well, we are not only talking about Arab Israelis, we are talking about Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza. For some reason, whenever Israel defends itself as not an apartheid state, it's kind of it's always oblivious to the Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza, as if they don't exist. But they do. There's 5 million people. So those people in the West Bank and Gaza live under completely different laws. And that's what makes Israel an apartheid state, and a common government would remove that. It would remove the occupation. And you know, we do simulations all the time to show how it would remove the occupation. So I understand that I'm not explaining all these issues. These are big issues. And I'll be showing more videos about how the common government would remove the occupation. But the benefit of having a common government, and for some reason, I don't understand why Mr. Friedman is so limited in his views. A global government, I mean, look at the United States. One government is globally responsible for 50 states, for 350 million people. Why not have one government that is globally responsible for the people of Israel, West Bank, and Gaza, and Jerusalem? Why do we need several captains on the ship? The one tells the ship to go this way, the other tells the captain to go the opposite way, and one completely confused. No, you need to have one captain on the ship. One government would give benefit to the Israeli and the Palestinian government. And it will work together with the Israeli and the Palestinian government. And a common government would not contradict the declared interest of the Israeli and the Palestinian government, and would give security and prosperity and peace to the people of Israel and Palestine. So I'll be speaking about all these issues, why a common government, what I call a common confederation, but you can call it a common government. So I hope that what I said was clear. My name is Joseph Avasar. If you wish to email me, you can send me an email to josephavassar@gmail.com. And also, if you want to join our simulation, the next simulation we're going to have is on May 31st. And I hope you join. You can go to our website, www.ipconfederation.org. So thank you so much. And we'll see you in the next simulation. Thank you.